Assalamu alaikum everyone, another micro learning session because you really loved all of the neurological kind of background that I was giving you and the brain-based backing for how to study for the Quran or Quranic memorization, surahs, what have you. So I have a little bit more information. This is going to be a little bit more about practical application of like when and what and how to study so that you can really be efficient with your time and maximize your long-term memory, right? Because we're spending all this time learning the Quran. We don't want it to just sit there in our short-term memory and then we forget it next week. We want it to really stick. So what does the research recommend? And, for some of these things, if you want to go back and look at some of the other, videos that I've done in the past, you can go ahead and find that on my screen. And also just to let you know, yes, these videos are a little bit longer, so you can hold onto the screen and it will go in double time. That's always pretty helpful. So when should we study? Well, we mostly do know of the hadith for the morning hours being the blessed time for believers. So I have to start with that. Yes, the early bird does catch the worm. And now we're going to move a little bit more into cognitive learning theories. I'm not going to spend too much time on the hadith because you can just Google that and find it. But when it comes to cognitive learning theories and how this is going to apply for our Quranic memorization or surahs, or even literally just learning anything, to be honest, let me zoom in a little bit so it gets a little bigger. You can feel free to take screenshots of this, but I'm going to start with something called interleaving. So this is a concept in cognitive learning theories where you are switching between learning activities. So for example, when it comes to Quranic memorization, you might spend a little bit of time, maybe 20 minutes or so, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever works for your, wherever you are at in your learning journey. And you maybe do some memorization for that amount of time. Get a little bit tired, that's okay. You don't have to push through when you're exhausted, mentally or even physically exhausted. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep. All of these things make a difference. That's okay. Interleaving tells us that we can just switch over to a different type of learning activity. Maybe you're going to practice the recitation of Quran now. So you go into recitation for 10 minutes and then you switch back over to memorization or even something totally different. But that switching back and forth actually keeps your brain kind of fresh and on alert. It kind of, doesn't really give it that opportunity to slow down or, take a break. It kind of keeps it on its toes, so to speak. All right, here's spacing effect. Spacing effect is a cognitive learning theory strategy, which is basically staggering your learning throughout the day or even the week. Okay, so essentially it's the opposite of cramming, which you see in my application section. It's the second bullet. Cramming does not work for long-term memory. Yes, it can help you with short-term memory, but long-term memory, you want to stick to spacing effect. Spacing effect is where maybe, and I actually just did this, you study, for example, the word-to-word memorization or just recitation in general. Maybe you're just practicing in a rote memorization repetition of your ayat of a particular surah that you're working on. You do it in the morning. Then you give yourself a little bit of break. You have breakfast, maybe you drink some tea, and then you come back to it. Or the best is going to be when you do it at night and then you wake up in the morning and do it again in the morning. You come back to that same information, and that is something which really which is something that kind of involves having an understanding of how neurons and neurologically how our brain functions, because at night while we sleep our brains actually they develop neurons, like it's called neurogenesis, or just even the connections between our neurons get deepened or they expand. And so of course, the more neurons that are interconnected with each other, the deeper your memory is going. So kind of ensuring that long-term memory as opposed to short-term memory. So application of this, of course, we've already got, yes, inshallah, we're going to try to catch those morning hours, especially after Fajr time. Cramming, like we said, try not to do that. Try to space out your studying. Number 3, the third bullet, space your revision time throughout the day or the week. Kind of a little similar to spacing effect, right? Just remembering to take breaks. It doesn't necessarily even have to look like interleaving where you're switching between the learning activities. It can literally just be that you step away from your books, you step away from your room, go take a shower, maybe do your salat or take a walk, anything. And then the last bullet, alternating between those learning objectives, which I kind of already, talked about as an example, where you do 20 minutes of this, 10 minutes of this, whatever. The minutes, it's going to be up to you and, how you feel about your learning journey. All right, this was a little bit more about my Quran class that I'm taking, but I'll just talk about anyways. You do want to kind of match your assessment style to your review style. So for example, if your assessment style is going to be where you are reciting, where you are reciting your surahs, that's recall. You have to come up with those words by yourself. Recognition is more, where it's paper and pencil, kind of maybe think multiple choice, where you see it on a paper or, you hear a word and then you just have to recognize it and, and your assessment takes place that way. But however it is that you're going to be assessed, you kind of want to match that to how you review. So when you're doing it in terms of, for example, recall, you have to recite a surah. You want to practice by reciting and saying it out loud as well. If it's just recognition, you might be able to get away with not writing things out or not reciting it, just kind of looking at it on a sheet of paper and recognizing the words or the information it is that you will be assessed on. 4 domains of language, just want to kind of touch on that because, language acquisition, so there's 4 different domains, and language acquisition in each of those domains can be different depending on, a lot of different variables. It can be just personal preference. It can be just how you learn. It might be how you're practicing things. The 4 domains of language are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And like I said, everybody develops those at different rates. So some people might be able to learn to read faster than they learn to write, or maybe they learn to speak faster than they can comprehend through listening. So those are the 4 domains, and they, have their own staggered growth rates. Multiple intelligence is a learning theory by Howard Gardner, where there are, he outlined 8 different ways that people learn. And I didn't go through and list all of those, but you could do an easy Google search or drop it in the comments, and I'd be happy to go over that learning theory as well. But yes, we do, have different preferences, but there is a neuromyth, which, if you are maybe somebody who likes to learn or learns faster through visuals, that's really the kind of only way to learn, and that's really not that's not true. It was something that was really promoted and believed for quite a while before, many years ago, but now, they've kind of, classified that as a neuromyth because yes, we can have preferences, but really we learn, and we should learn in all different ways. We shouldn't just kind of, as teachers say, we don't want to teach to strengths. We want to be able to, develop all the different aspects of our intelligence, or at least many of them. So anyways, I hope that this was some helpful information. I guess we'll do this one. Don't mind this little, that wasn't supposed to be there, but the little bullet at the bottom. But basically, all the way on the bottom, application, which is, really helpful. And that is that, we want to be able to tie our new information to information that we already know. So when it comes to Quran recitation or memorization, word to word, translations, things like that, you want to be able to connect this new information to something that you already know. So for example, if it's a word that you are studying, like let's say, we hear the phrase fil ard in the Quran a lot. And so if we're thinking fi means in, al means the, and ard, what is ard? We kind of, oh gosh, what is that? Well, a sound alike for that would be to connect that to a word you already know in English, which is earth. And so that means in the earth, or in the land, on the land, things like that. So you're connecting your new information to information you already know, your prior knowledge. So that helps to also strengthen your long-term memory. And I hope that you guys found any of this helpful. Follow along for more.